Hello and welcome. Today we've got Gene Decode, and we are going to be discussing timelines and different universes. Now, just before we begin, you can subscribe to my Telegram channel and to nicholasveniamin.com for my free email updates. And if you're watching this for the first time on YouTube, I will leave the link below in the description for the full interview. Gene, thank you so much for joining me. And how are you? And how do we begin?
I'm a little bit under it again today. The Magellan's has flared up again. I tried CBD oil added to my topical and it made me way worse. So I'm stinging and burning, a little bit nauseous. So I'm got some popcorn here on the side to help me feel a little bit better. I'll be munching. So
yeah, well,
try to mute when I'm munching.
Well, I wish you a speedy recovery, and I like the popcorn because that's more of what we should all be doing,
Absolutely, totally agree.
So, we talk about different timelines, and we've spoken about this before. And you've mentioned when we make a different decision, like a big decision. For an example, you're married and you decide to get a divorce. You then create another universe, and your consciousness moves into that different universe, and it continues a different timeline, and it leaves the previous timeline. And in the previous timeline, when you were married, you continue with that person being married, but then on the other timeline, you're now single. So, can you please explain first of all, what it means to change timelines and explain the quantum behind that, if you can, please?
Right. So to understand, you don't always create a new universe. Mostly what you do is when a major choice comes to you, like you did, where you decided not to become a barrister, to do what you did. Well, there is a you that became a barrister. So that's a different way of making decisions based on a different set of values. The you that decided to go the other way accepted a set of values where more about, some maybe perhaps, I don't know, depending on the reason, but, maybe it was to have more affluence and power and et cetera, notoriety. And then a you that here is more service to others, for example. So that's a different energy vibration. And so what isolates the timelines are the different universes, which are all based on choice from each other, is that the overall quantum signature or packet vibration is different than the ones next to it. And the further you get apart from the timelines, the more different. So there's timelines, for example, where the US is still not independent from Britain. The Revolutionary War and the Founding Fathers didn't go that way, or maybe perhaps, with Benedict Arnold and all that, he's a hero. And they lost the Revolutionary War. And so all of that choices have occurred. God allows for all possible choices. So when you look at what is, understanding quantum packet vibration, it's called collapsing the wave function, or collapsing the wave. You look at quantum, when you're looking at a particle like light or electrons, and they're originally trying to decide if they're a particle or a wave. For example, photocells say that it's a particle and it's bumping energy and electrons and things like that. It's particles bumping each other and putting off electrons and things like that. But if you look at other situations, it seems that light is a wave, and they were trying to understand this. So they built a photon barrier, or with electrons, an electron barrier, and they put two slits. And so they called the two slit experiment, where they said, okay, if the back where we have a barrier for that particle, we see a wave pattern like you see on a beach, light, dark, light, dark, light, dark kind of thing, then that's a wave pattern. But if we see a bunch of hits behind the slits and a kind of an overlap between the two slits in the middle, where they kind of concentrate again, then it's a particle. Well, they found out that if nothing is watching this, you get a wave. But even an electronic eye, which is, of course, designed by somebody who's made a choice, then you see a particle. So what you're seeing with the wave is all of the possible different universes. Light is showing everything. It's showing all of the possibilities. You're seeing every possibility until you observe it. And that you that's observing it is in a specific pattern of choice or vibration. So that what is the particle vibration is deciding the universe that particle is in. And that particle vibration is delineated by the overall consensus of choice. So, for example, the Earth overall, the Armageddon timelines, for example, that exist where the Antichrist is already walking the earth. We have a nuclear war going on. The Ever Given was never stopped, never searched. That did happen. It's a timeline in which the Alliance did not have the upper hand or does not exist, and even further away. And so there's nuclear war. The Antichrist is here. And so with the Bible, originally, that's why it had so many books. And the Cabal's been taking books out because they don't want anything that would interfere, any delineation of any other timeline that would interfere with what they're trying to do, which is to create a new world order. So they're trying to get rid of that. So it had many councils, like several councils of Nicaea, Council of Tudor, etc., where they removed different books from the Bible, like the book of Enoch and the book of Sarah, and the many books, 67 books are the books of maps and keys that tie into the book of Sarah. The book of Sarah is a timeline choice that is parallel to the book of Revelations, in which up until the mark, then it deviates, and it has a slight deviation before that, in which the Antichrist doesn't come. So the mark in that is never actually put into the right hand and the forehead physically on the timelines we're on, or the Great Awakening in the book of Sarah, but we're not aware of it because they don't want us to be aware of it. It's hidden under the Vatican and the dumb down there. So in that timeline, you don't have a worldwide, Armageddon. You don't have a horrific, destruction of humanity and all of this. That there's a Red Sea moment in which, like in the book of Esther, God switches everything around, and the people that serve God and serve others and aren't selfish and wanting, mostly concerned about them and theirs, and not really concerned about the human race or the planet as a whole. They're not that as much compassionate. Well, that's a different way of thinking and being. You're going to go to a world and a universe that matches that, if that's how you are. So you wind up on a world more New World Order, like where people are more self-serving, like the people in charge are more self-serving. Here, the people that are actually in charge will become the people in charge as the people make the choice, whether, like you saw in England with the big rallies where there's people standing up and we're not going to do a vax, or we're not going to do, we're not going to do this stuff. We're not going to allow them to mandate this stuff. We're not that's not even legal. Mandate is not law. They're saying it's law. It's not law. It's not in our Constitution. It's against the, our rights is put forth in the US in the Constitution, and in your country through the Magna Carta and all of these different things. It's not in regards to that. And so, the timelines are constantly altering. Additionally, the Cabal is trying to manipulate and control timelines. They even went as far as with the USS Eldridge with the Philadelphia experiment. In some timelines, that's in 1942, some it's in 1943, in which they moved the Eldridge from Boston Harbor to Philadelphia Harbor from 1942 or 3 to 1987. And then back. And so using that time travel technology, they started going back in time. Once they built Montauk facility in Montauk Island, they were going back in time and getting rid of people that would have stood in their way before their grandfather, before he had a son, that would have a son that would get in their way. They're really making sure that the timeline is eradicated. So at first it didn't seem to work. And they found through the work of a high-level mathematician and physicist that worked with Einstein and Tesla on the Philadelphia experiment named von Neumann. He did the time manifold equations and realized that timelines are in manifolds of 8. To completely eradicate something like that, you don't eradicate it, you jump yourself to a different manifold by going back 8 times. So they sent the special team back in time another 7 times. So they come back and say, you get rid of the guy? No, he's still here. No, we did. So go back and do it again. And then they burn the person's body completely, make sure they're gone. No, he's still here. So they finally got to where they understood this. So they created the timeline bundles, or, of 8, the manifolds that we have. They're heading towards the New World Order. However, now, because God still will not allow for no choice, we don't know a lot of the choices we had because they're removed from the Bible, but we still have that choice to be, respectful, stand up for ourselves, stand up for the planet, stand up for each other, stand up for humanity as a whole, stand especially up for the children, for rights and, dignity, and to be treated respectfully and raised as children should be, and not have, all this sexual baloney and, really evil stuff done, and trafficking and all this stuff. So that's now occurring. So, for example, there's a timeline where Notre Dame didn't burn 4 days before Easter Eve. It burned Easter Eve. On that timeline, that's Armageddon. That's where the Antichrist comes up. On this timeline, it was 4 days earlier. So the Antichrist, that was the portal. That Notre Dame was built on the Temple of Isis, which is where they've done sacrifices underneath in the huge, catacombs that lay under Paris, which was built for Isis, Par-Isis. It's for Isis, and all those bodies are the death that they brought about by the Black Plague. All the bodies were assembled there to bring all that pain and misery and suffering and death underneath. So then they'd have catacombs going under Notre Dame, and what they're doing is at that time every year, they're opening a portal with satanic black magic and child sacrifice. Every year they're making it bigger and bigger and bigger, exactly at that time. So you have the exact same energy alignments, so that timing, and location, like they say in real estate, is everything. So they were setting the time, but to get a being like, Lucifer up from the underverse takes a massive portal. You're talking a massive energy being. So it's needs to be a big doorway. You're not going to drive a semi through the front door of your house. You have to have a big, huge tunnel to get him out. So they were opening a bigger and bigger. He was due to come up during the time they burned it, but it has to be on that same timing. If you do it on a different time, it's like cracking the door open, but you don't have the energy to open it all the way. So then when that energy, the event of the burning of it stops, it's like the door, you let the door slam shut and it shatters the door, so he can't get out anymore. And now you've shattered the door and locked it down, so that now they would have to do thousands of years of doing that again at some location, that one or another one. So we're past that now. That timeline doesn't exist. And so that choice doesn't exist. There is a timeline, like I said, where the Japanese didn't find out about that they cloned a body of Christ, a clone body, to bring up Lucifer in, so that you could have the Antichrist rise. And so, people are going, where's this in the Bible? It's not there anymore. You can see some remnants if you read verbatim very carefully, instead of interpreting it. We have people keep interpreting this and that, like with the mark and all this. The physical laying of the mark on your right hand and forehead, the getting the thing that goes in your arm is tied to in the U.S. Social Security number. They check your number, or they're your national, like in the UK, your national, is it registry number, or what do you call it?
We call it the national insurance number. So this is a number that we use to say, we give this number to our employer. So when they pay us, they can use that number to, declare the taxes through our pay slips.
Right. So that number there is tied to when you go get the thing in your arm. So they register you. It was eventually, and the plan is to still, with Event 21, Agenda 21, is to roll out a mandatory passport or card that you have to carry. That would be the first thing, to show you got the stuff in your arm, to shop, to buy, to travel, to sell, to do anything, to have a job. So again, that's the first step. The second step, will make it easier. Instead of having to carry a piece of paper, you can get a chip put in your right hand or your forehead, because some people in the Middle East that have been convicted of stealing have had their right hand cut off for stealing. And so I know in the US, if you get your Social Security abstract, it's more advanced now. You don't have just a barcode, you have these dots. If you turn it sideways to the left, so it's perpendicular, you can see if you look at a distance of those dots, it'll have a right RH in the dots or an FH, which again stands for right hand and forehead. So now we're not on a timeline. We avoid getting these mandates and that we have to have this, and then we have to carry the card, and then the next step, then we'll avoid timelines that again dovetail back into the Armageddon timelines, which they have their New World Order and all of that. Like I was reading on Patriot Underground, the document from John Hopkins, in which they talk about the SPARS pandemic. And it says that the world communities will become isolated other than being interconnected through the internet, and very sparse worldwide. I mean, isolated, sparse communities. That's Agenda 21. That's Georgia Guidestones. That's exactly what they're talking about, where they deplete the human population and you have a one world government, no cities or states or anything. That's human populations, just like a bunch of cattle in corrals. That's their thing. That's already how they're treating. If you look like with the thing to test it, they put like this huge stick up your nose, right? That's what they do to cattle. That's how they look at us, these top 1%ers. But what you have going on is with the 1%ers, like David Adair said in his recent lecture, where a 1%er that's in the Pacific Rim in an Indonesian, the head of that country came to him to build a thorium containment system that with that, he could power something the size of his thumb amount of thorium could power the entire continent of Europe. Well, if they're funding him for 3 trillion. So what's that saying? That's saying that and like he said, it seems to me, and I totally agree, that there's a war between the top 1%ers, that one group has realized that if you destroy this planet, you go with it. If you destroy all human life or bring it that kind of future and you rape the planet to death, you'll go with it. The planet will die, whether you're underneath it in a dome or not, it won't matter. And another group says, no, we can continue doing this. And so one group, the Alliance now, backed by these top 1%ers, is saying, no, we're going to distribute our technology and wealth to the entire human race. They've realized that if you force somebody to work for just enough to make the bills and this, that when they go to work, they don't do the best they can do. They do what they have to do. And that's it. They're not going to do the best they can do. When somebody loves, like a lot of Japanese companies, if somebody comes up with an idea and the company uses it, they get advanced in the company, they get additional, rewards in their pay, etc. So if in that situation where people are respected, they love the people they work with, they love going to work, they're going to work as hard as they can and love going to work. And so you're going to get a much more powerful output than forcing people. So, and these other 1%ers have realized that to the point where they've actually become more compassionate and stopped doing the Satanism, and actually are now to the point where they're realizing there is only one God. And that's why they saw with the timeline, with the Project Looking Glass, the timelines were ending for them. And they were trying to figure out why. And a part of the group was smart enough, to realize the truth of it, that you're seeing the hand of God interfering with, because the time of Satan has come to an end, where he doesn't get out. He's brought to judgment. He's terminated. All of these things are occurring on the other timeline. And so what's that doing is it's, God creating another timeline, like 107 has said, when I was on the last show, that we're going to see a Red Sea moment, which will be a Haman moment, like we have the Hey Man in, DC, Smokey Joe and Mirrors, who's not even who we know. It's just something, playing a game. And then we have the real, which I think, like I said, be late August or late September, October, we'll see the return of the Republic in this country, in America. And so in that, you're talking about a timeline where people stand up, and the people that we elect, we really elect. We get who we vote for. We get people that represent us, that care about us, that stand by us. Yeah. And so the cabal has not only been removing books from the Bible to get where we are today, they've also been like the big primary timelines influence the other timelines. They bounce against each other. People jump back and forth. Like the you that decided to become a barrister is on a more self-serving timeline that would be more Armageddon-like. But this you know, that's the quantum packet vibration of that you. So you go to a timeline, a universe that fits more with that type of choices and thinking and behavior. And the you that's here matches more wanting to help the children, wanting to help others, caring about other people, being kind, respectful, being a gentleman, being a true, you know, person that respects others and loves other people and loves to, you know, have people that love each other and care about each other and care about the world. You know, that's a totally different vibration of way of being. So you're heading into the Book of Sarah and the timelines in which God makes a difference and changes everything instead of allowing for them to continue until they come to their end in 2045, is with the current timelines for Armageddon end on, like in the movie Intergalactic, where all life eventually dies out and this becomes a barren rock. And the reason that's why they used Looking Glass and they quit using it, because that's all they could see, is up to the year 2045, no matter where they targeted to go forward in time past that and where they targeted on in the universe or the earth to be, they wound up in front of the Lucifer horse at DIA and everything was rubble and there was not a living thing, not even a microbe is alive. So that's the future, and that in that choice of absolute service to self, which God says, end. So they've been trying to do that too. They've been trying to end us and end. So they've even gone like in a very powerful timeline in which the human race was getting a, like, you know, a true representational government and had free energy and anti-gravity called Tataria. They already had that developed, and that was so powerfully altering the other timelines because people on there are vibrating so powerfully and they're moving back and forth to slight timelines beside them. It's causing it to, like, timelines bleed into each other to some degree. And so the Tataria timeline, what they did is they caused a whole lot of debris from space. They steered it in and bombarded the earth, which caused a giant mud flood, and it ended the, you know, most of the life there, and it made so much misery and suffering that it matched this timeline. So it truncated into this timeline. So, you know, for most people, that's not the past. For me, that's not that history is not my past. There are people from here that remember that, and there's evidence of it here. You know, for me, I have, because I'm the last male heir in my father's side of the family, and I have, everything came down to me. I have my family tree back to the year 667. I have letters and things hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years ago. I have original photography on metal plates, all kinds of stuff, newspaper clippings. I mean, ancient stuff. And, you know, if there was a mud flood, you know, I would have, you know, I have letters from the Civil War, the Revolutionary War between husband and wife, you know, the War of 1812. I mean, all the Great Depression, all of that's, you know, letters back and forth and different things and newspaper clippings. I would have some evidence of a massive event like that, but I don't. But you can see that that is here on the timeline. You know, like for me, you know, my first experience of a timeline jump was in 7th grade, where I had 2 locker partners, and then over the holiday break, I came back. I had 1 locker partner, and all the lockers were now devoid of the second shelf that the other locker partner's on. And I was so confused. And I got off the bus at my friend's house, and the house wasn't even there. My other locker partner, the whole house was gone. It's just a big, huge tree in an abandoned lot with big weeds. And I'm like walking around, I'm 11 years old. I'm freaked, you know, but I've had those things happen. And, you know, the big one that everybody knows, of course, is Mandela. So they call it the Mandela effect. Now, I knew about it for a long time. So, you know, if you look into the Mandela effect, and, you know, for me, Nelson Mandela was beaten almost to death in his prison cell. And then he then was hung from the bars above on the prison cell. And they made a movie about it too. And so I was at sea in a sub. We came up and copied what's called a skid with a floating wire that you float on top of floats kind of near the surface of the water, and they can copy radio and get information and newscasts and information. That's how we got our news at sea. And so announced that he became president of South Africa. I'm like, how could he become president of South Africa? He's dead. And so half the crew was going, yeah, I remember that. Another half the crew is going, no, no, no. He never was. I go, no. And so there's all kinds of now effects of the timelines, because again, with the Philadelphia experiment, they're actually been manipulating it and going back. So, you look at like there was the Bernstein Bears, and it's actually was the Bernstein Bears, Bernstein and Bernstein. That's one difference. Another one, for example, is if I was to ask you, Nicholas, for you, did you see the movie Forrest Gump?
No, I haven't.
Okay, how about the Snow White?
I'm probably a long time ago. I'm really bad with movies. I'm not much of a movie person. I'm more of a Michael Jackson person.
Okay. In the Bible, do you remember what the lion lays down with?
I can't remember.
Okay, so in some timelines, the lion lays down with the lamb, which makes sense that the world's so peaceful that now you don't have that predatory thing going on anymore. But now on the timeline, it's the lion lays down with the wolf, which for me is kind of, so what? They're two predators. They're eyeing each other very carefully. And, for me, it was sex in the city. And now it's sex in the city in this. In Forrest Gump, he would say, Mom always told me that life is like a box of chocolates. And, that's what it says now. But that doesn't even make any sense. His life was like a box of chocolates. It's one of two for people. When the Wicked Witch went to the mirror, she'd say, mirror, mirror on the wall. Now it's magic mirror on the, it's totally different. In Wizard of Oz, it was, fly, it's totally different. So there's all these changes, like in the Monopoly. This is the guy I knew. Now there's a different guy. He doesn't have a molecule. And so there's all these bizarre changes. There's even changes like when I'd flown millions of miles in planes, and I always get a wing seat because there's flying space A as military. And so I'd always try to get on the front of the wing so I could look at the ground at least, because the engine's stuck way out the back. And you can even find model airplanes of the exact same plane where the engine's sticking out the back, where now it's sticking out the front. So there's all of these bizarre differences that, if you can go into the site. So on Tartaria, the Tartaria is, the mud flood legacy and all of this. Tartaria was a massive, it's all of what we know that became the Soviet Union, and then some in China and all of that. And it was a massive, for me, this didn't exist, and the people were massive. And there was all of these buildings and Gothic structures that came from there that, you can't really explain how they are built here. What is the technology and things to build some of the massive structures? So you even have where you have buildings like you see here, and they're excavating to do other structures and things, and they find it underneath the building that it had a whole bunch of floors before and lower pillars and all of this, and the street level was down here. And the same thing here. You see the street level has been changed. And so, and I even know personal people's homes like that, where there's a floor that's with a sliding glass door that opens on dirt. I'm like, why'd you put a slide? It's like, what in the world? This is like, who builds a home like that? And so part of what occurred, I knew there was a timeline change. And I've had some ones that, like I said, were friends and whole homes and stuff disappeared, but I haven't, and like Mandela and this kind of thing. And so when I was, reporting about what occurred at the Capitol building, now I'm having to re-educate myself about DC completely, because it's completely different. The first rock of the Capitol building was planted by Washington in 1793, and it became a building that had on the front a dome, and then on the back it had what we know as the White House and the Rose Gardens, so it looked like an owl. On one side was the House, another part was the Senate, Another further extension was the Supreme Court. And so now, of course, that was true for this building, as far as I understand. And so now what you have, the White House was never part, they're blocks apart. The White House was never part of the Capitol building. You have the Senate chamber on one side, the House chamber on the other, you have the rotunda. They also have the crypt on the first floor. I mean, really satanic. If you look at the structure, it still is, you have DC and the Capitol building. It still does make the owl, the Moloch owl, but it's not the Rose Gardens doing it anymore. It's not this side being the White House and this side over here being the Capitol building. Those are now separate buildings. So apologize for people that I'm not keeping track. I knew a big change had happened because my neighbor in the fall last year lost her husband. And I told my wife, yeah, at least she has her daughters. She goes, and her son. I go, son, what son? So for my wife, I had to slightly jump with my wife too. Like she had a son. I go, not for me. So I went over, I saw her the next day, we were back getting ready to barbecue in the Barbie in the back porch. And she was there too, setting a little picnic to kind of get over in grief together with her daughter. And I went over the fence and talked to her. I said, I'm sorry to hear what happened. If I can help you when winter comes, shoveling the snow, because now you don't have a man in the house, or when the summer comes, help cutting your lawn and those things. And she said, that's really sweet. And I said, well, at least you have your daughters to help you around the house and things. She goes, I only have one daughter, Jane. I'm like, oh, sorry, my confusion. Like this, my confusion. I'm sorry, but I just didn't realize it was this big. I know it sounds totally ludicrous and like a rationalization, but this is the truth for me. I'm literally, as you can see, researching and relearning how DC is now laid out. And I told the world coordinator, same thing. And my world coordinators actually, not mine, but God's world coordinators that help answer the Gmail, the Blessed for Service team. I told them, and he goes, what? I've gotten a tour of the building. I know it's that way. I go, me too. It's not that way. Not anymore. He goes, wait, let me go look at this. And I pulled up a map and goes, I am this is making my head hurt. I had to go take a drive. This is making my head hurt. I go, me too. It's so different now. I mean, it's bizarre. So I apologize for people not tracking the change. I didn't realize it had been so broad sweeping. So now, yes, they still came out of the White House through tunnels going to the Congress, but that's what I'm being told. I checked and I go, okay, they didn't come directly through the building. Change, because the timelines changed. It's just like, oh my gosh. But if you remember in the video, it does say in the background, she's talking over it, but you can hear clear the boulevard or the avenue. I think it is Pennsylvania Avenue for Trump and Kennedy. They're departing or something. It's hard to hear exactly, but you can hear that part at least. So they're departing from the Capitol building. So apologize for being not keeping myself up to date, checking things right before an interview that how things are. It just seemed kind of obvious to me. And I've gone on several other platforms adamantly saying, you're confused. No, I'm sorry. I was confused. This is how it was originally built. And then it was pretty much almost burned to the ground and almost washed away. Rains set the fires out in the War of 1812 that saved it from burning completely down, but they had to completely renovate it. And then they later added the dome and added other things. So it's an ongoing building that's been growing and growing and growing from the first laying the first groundstone.
Can you open that? Sorry, Jane.
Say again, sir?
Could you open that, please? The one you've got the mouse on, if you don't mind. Yeah, just so that the viewers can have a look. Sorry, please carry on. Sorry.
So it's been a few architects and designers. It's grown over the years. I do remember during the time of Lincoln when they started on my timeline building the dome and it said over the White House. The dome was the entrance that made it a different entrance to go into the White House, the Congress, and the Senate and the Supreme Court. And so, again, it's completely different other than the overall layout still shows you the owl, the Moloch owl. but the building itself, you know, this is the US Capitol building, Congress, Senate, etc. But it's no longer the White House that's in there. So you can see old pictures and things of how it used to look. And you can go back and, you know, see, and it's interesting to study the history now as it's completely different. And the construction of, as it was ongoing, and they had to stop during the Civil War, then they restarted and, you know, continued during the time of Lincoln, and it kept, you know, kind of sort of done in 1864, but then they continued and making changes as the country grew and more things happened and changed. So, I mean, it was significantly different, as you can see, at different times in its history. There's significant changes. So, I mean, it's, you know, changed a lot over time, but now on the timeline, it's never, you know, what it was today. I mean, there's other buildings that are similar, like in Colorado, the Capitol building in Colorado. This has solid gold, the dome in the Colorado State Capitol. It has a gold flake put on top of it. And it doesn't have, it has a kind of like a glass kind of thing on top. I have to check on that. The timeline might be different. Has it, from what I remember, there's a glass thing. And it's like when I went to go to I'd gone through college to get an engineering degree. And then I decided to change to a medical degree. So I had to go get, they wanted to see not just my, you know, stuff I did to get the engineering degree, that I had that degree, but also to see my high school records. So I went back to my high school to get my records, and I had graduated high school with a 4.23 grade average out of 423 students, because in the city I was in, I had taken every possible elective. I did double sessions, I did summer sessions. I just love to learn, and I wound up going through everything. So I was allowed to take college courses that I got A's in too. And so for that, when I got an A for a college course, it was 5.2 instead of 4.0. So actually out of four, it's easy to remember, it was 423 students. I was a 4.23 on the honor roll. And now when I pulled up my records, all these courses are gone. And I have the 3.67. I'm like, where's the rest? And my GP is wrong. And so, you know, she came back, that's all you have. I go, how could I have no information on courses that now aren't on my record? So, you know, I remember things that I've studied and learned that don't even exist on this timeline. This me, you know, I do have the ability to tap into my memories of this me here, but this me didn't take those courses. And so, you know, the predominant you will overwrite if you merge into another you. And so that's my case here. I've merged 4 times into timelines, because on 3 of the timelines that this me was originally from, they blew the planet, the cabal actually wound up blowing the planet to bits. And so I remember, and then the second one, when Hillary got elected, I watched them nuke the city I was in. And I sat up, there it goes. No, that was coming all my life. And then suddenly I was back in many years earlier, and I was like, I'm confused. Which is, God said, it wasn't your time to go. I moved you to another timeline, because you signed up to do certain things and you haven't been able to do them. So because they nuked the world, now I've reset the timelines, because that was not allowed at all to do that. They never showed that they were going to eradicate all life on the surface of the earth with nuclear weapons. So he reset the timeline completely, and then we got to the same time frame, and Hillary didn't win. You know, it was literally an act of God that allowed Trump to get in. So there's been a massive amount of alterations by God or by the cabal. And so, you know, for me, originally Hillary won, and then the timeline was reset. God reset the timeline, and we then had a complete reset there. So there's a lot of timeline resets. I've tracked good with that one, because God was telling me verbatim what. So this is the Colorado State building, as I was saying. This is a glass kind of ball that's up here, and then there's this gold flake all over it. And this is still what's known as Capitol Hill in Denver. So, I mean, a lot of really, really interesting changes, you know, that continue to go on. There's the map showing the Moloch owl really, really well, and all the satanic symbols are still the same. And I did want to just mention briefly about the flooding that's going on in China, and divert here now to what's going on. And there was a tunnel that was flooded, and they're rescuing a lot of cars were completely drowned, and a lot of people died. They're saying, of course, it's a very small amount of people died, but it's not even remotely true. And then I also wanted to mention really quickly to watch this video. They're stopping container ships and trucks, and refrigerator trucks drivers are being told to pull it over and just let the what they're carrying sit, and so it rots. So I would advise people to get supplies and be ready. It is a possibility that you may need it. I'm not promoting fear, I'm promoting preparedness. So that's the basics of what I wanted to say, and apologize to people for, I know it sounds totally ludicrous for those of you that don't believe in timeline changes, but for me, it's always been, I even see them when they're coming. A lot of the times, if it means something massive, I've averted experiences like a lethal accident on a highway. I saw it coming and went off the highway before it occurred, and then it occurred and I wasn't in it. And so God gave me that ability to change timelines and see the changes. That's why when people say, what's the date that this is going to happen, that's happened, I don't go by dates. I go by my vision into the future of like Project Looking Glass. There's people that have the gift from God to see timelines. So I look at the predominance of where the predominant timelines, like now it's 50-50, late August, we'll see the return of the public. Then if that doesn't occur, then it's late September, early October, predominantly after that. I don't do hard dates and then certain things I can't go into because like Jisara and Asara right now, it's too many variables that are influencing the direction of the timeline. There's too many variables, too many people with different choices, that the plethora of lines haven't delineated down yet to primary lines based on what everybody wants. What timeline you are on is a broad, if you will, God takes all of the inputs from every being that's on that planet and surveys it. It goes into the singularity where God is, and then it comes back out and manifests the reality we have, so that we are, and this is what the Cabals have been doing, is creating fear to control our choices and keep us in fear. So we choose fear, we choose terror, we choose negativity, we choose selfishness, we choose to serve their timelines, to create them and make them come into being. That's what black magic actually is. And we're actually taught how to do spells. We're taught how to spell correctly when we're going to school. And the words themselves, and we're not told the meaning of things. So if you look at the legal system, for example, the judge is actually a magician. He's a magistrate. He straightens out the magic spells. He wears a black robe with a round circle within a square. It's a circle within a square. The secret brotherhood, he gives you the third degree. He's 3 levels up. You're caught between the 12 jurors who are deciding if you're guilty, but their judge is not doing in the US, for example, what he's supposed to, is saying if you to judge him guilty within the law, and if the law is constitutional. They don't even tell you that anymore. And it's existential law. That's satanic law, in which precedence matters. Precedence doesn't matter. What matters is the Constitution in your country, the Magna Carta. What is the original foundations of the law? We adhere that. And if you're going to change the law, it can't be by a judgment. It has to be done as a complete rewrite. You have to go in and say, we're altering this, like an amendment to the Constitution or something like that. You can't just say because of some court judgment, we're going to change how we look at things. That's precedence law. That's satanic. That's walking a line that's gray, grayer, darker till it's black. And, what do you get when you go to court? You get either justice or it's injustice. Well, both is the same thing, because what's the ICE at the end? International corporate entity. What's that? Corporation, corporate entity. It's part of the crown system of the Crown of England and the Crown Corporation under the Virginia Company of the Paysuers that mandate to the magician what spells to put on you. So you're either in just ice or you're in just ice. Either way, it's the same system. You're either in it or you're just of it. So that's,
yeah,
yes,
sure.
go ahead.
So let's talk about the timelines a little bit more, right? Just so we can then go into it a bit more. So when we make a decision, a big decision, say we want to get married or we want to get divorced or we want to, quit being a barrister so I can do this, for an example. You're saying that I then create another universe. My consciousness has moved into the new me. My old me is continuing with the same timeline of continuing to be a barrister or whatever you was doing. And I'm in a different universe now with a different life, or the same life, but with a better frequency vibration timeline.
You don't actually create a new universe. You move to a universe that you resonate with based on that decision. So if that decision is more altruitive, so it's more service to others and God and all of that, and respectful and considerate, you would, if you're on a very negative timeline, a very service to self type timeline, you don't resonate. If your resonation gets too far off, timelines are actually sticky.
Right.
It's
so
like a string on a bow, like a violin or a cello. You stick because you're there normally because you're resonating. But if your resonation starts to get more and more divergent, you're going to start pulling on the bow with that stickiness is only going to hold you so long. Then you're going to snap off that bow and start going through timelines to hit the one, come to the one you resonate with, but you have momentum. So you're going to go past that one because you have momentum. So let's say you become more service to others. You'll go past the one you resonate and wind up on a timeline that's actually even more positive than you are. That's going to make you, because you were already making choices to become more positive, it's going to help you become even more positive, more service to others, more service to God. Same thing if you go the other way, you become more negative. You go past the one that's more negative than you are, but you're so much more positive than the other beings there on that timeline. You're now influencing them to become more positive. So it's always an uplifting thing when people move.
So if I'm making a different decision, say for an example, we've decided to help humanity. So now, we've made the new decision. We've moved into another universe that resonates with us more. So which you said, because it's more positive, then we will become more positive as well. So why is it in those timelines or in those universes that we've just moved into, which are more positive, we still meet negative people? Why are they with us in that timeline?
Again, because if you move to more positive, you actually move past. So you're meeting people that are more negative than you overall. Because you're more positive, you're influencing them to become more positive. Of course, there'll be a meeting of the minds between some way in between, but it's going to be a synthesis of something, of the person you're with and the people that are with you. So you're going to overall create a more positive than you had before. And it's going to bleed through everybody in that timeline. Same thing by negative. You're adding more positive to more negative, but you are so vastly more positive that it influences the timeline to a more positive. And every time it moves, it always moves it more positively. This is what the 1%ers have understood. A group of them have said, no matter what you do, obviously God's in charge because it always makes it better. I mean, more positive, more service to others than more service. No matter how much negative you do, it winds up in it's resetting itself at a point. If it becomes too negative, that timeline literally self-destructs. If it gets too service to self, it's like putting you in a room with no food and you're eating your fingernails and then you're eating the ends of your fingers and eventually it consumes itself. Right. And it completely collapses and it's completely recycled. They go, yeah, the timeline we are on is going to come to an end, because that's the way that the creator works, is that if something's too negative, like the body's immune system, you see it in everything. Nature self-corrects to more positive. Our immune system self-corrects to a more positive, a more healthy, a more whole, a more happy, a more resonant, a more, I love life. I can appreciate things. I'm not miserable. That's the nature of creation itself, because that's the nature of God, is respectful, considerate, loving, caring. Humans naturally are that way. It's this negative stuff that's become a parasite, and it's got so service to self. It's starting to now implode and eat itself up. And any system that's eating itself from the inside eventually completely collapses. You can't do that forever. You can constantly upgrade, but you can't constantly downgrade. There's a limit, and then it collapses. It recycles to the singularity, and that choice is looked at as an overall, bad idea. We're not going to build that again because it implodes itself. I mean, you have a part on a car and it eats the engine every time. You're going to say, well, we're not going to put that kind of water pump in the car anymore because it overheats and causes the whole engine to, you got to rebuild the whole engine. That water pump doesn't work. So you don't use that kind of water pump. You do something totally different. That's how creator works. That's why we're now getting to a Red Sea moment, because all of the timelines have gotten, the Armageddon are getting so negative that the whole system's getting ready to collapse. So God made the beings in charge at the top, a group of them, realize the truth and see the truth.
Yeah, Gene, I want to get into that in a bit, in a few minutes, but I want to ask you this, right? If I was hypothetically Superman and I could fly from here to the moon hypothetically, okay? Because we know the moon is we see it. So if I had superpowers, I could get there. Just like there's a sun, we have the solar system, and then we have the Milky Way. And then, for an example, we have other Milky Ways or galaxies. Okay, so if I was Superman, hypothetically, and I could travel to these places, okay, and I had the best superpowers ever, would I be able to travel to another universe, to another timeline to see my other me? Is that possible in the physicality if I was Superman?
You don't have to be Superman. You can do it now. I do it.
No, but I mean physically, because I could.
I do too.
Sorry? I
do too.
But I mean in my body, in this body, not consciously, not spiritually. I'm talking about in my body. I'm trying to understand that. Is it in the same density as us?
I actually teach how to do that. I actually do that. I go to other parallels, Earths, to help them to overcome the cabal. For example, there was one that I had started them to be able to get out of the concentration camps and to learn how to get out and wake people up. And that they wound up getting, the human race free of the cabal and the control. I mean, there's a lot of death in the process, but they got out of having a 35-year lifespan as absolute slaves with a number and no name and not allowed to talk and, pretty much just treated like an animal. And, I convinced them that life is not just being alive, it's really living and being service to others and things like that. So they were able to learn how to do it. Well, later on, I was getting ready to go on a trip, and I was, it had just snowed 2 or 3 feet overnight, and we need to get out of the house very early. So we need to take the vehicle, and I need to shovel the driveway. So I packed really quickly. I'm a quick packer, and then I went out to shovel the driveway. I'm looking all over for my wife. I can't find her anywhere. I wanted her to start packing because, women take a longer time. They have more things to get ready. They have to do makeup and all these other, nice clothes and different things, different kinds of clothes for different things. I kind of wear a lot of similar clothes for one thing and other things too. And so I couldn't find her. I literally went into the backyard, on the back porch. I looked into the basement, into the crawl space, in the garage, in the driveway. It's still untracked snow. I'm like, oh my goodness, where'd she go? Then I would start back. Maybe I missed her. So I started back and looking in closets now in the bedrooms and stuff. I got back down. I go, I don't understand. I looked out the front window. Maybe she went for a walk, and I just walked across the lawn, didn't walk, through the snow, and didn't walk down the driveway. I didn't see a track. Then I saw movement in the driveway. I look over, and the driveway is now, not even 5 minutes later, over half shoveled. Over 2 feet of snow. I'm like, that's not possible. I go out there and put on some warm clothes, go out there a minute later. I said, you got to go in and pack. I'll finish this. We need to get going. I'll finish this. Thanks for getting it going. So, she goes, okay. So she goes in, And I also had to do the dishes because they're stacked up from the night before, and I don't want to come back weeks later to moldy dishes. It's better to just do them. I can do them in 4 or 5 minutes. So I finished the driveway really quick, and I went in to do the dishes, and they're all done. And she hates doing dishes. We have agreement. She cooks, I do dishes, right? So I went up. I go, thanks for doing the dishes, but you really need to focus on just packing right now. She goes, I didn't do the dishes. I go, oh, so I sat down and I just started going through the timelines of the me's I've helped till I found the one that, resonated with the memories of doing dishes here. And I told him, thank you for doing the dishes. He goes, Gene, it's the least I could do for all the help you've given. I can come over there and at least do the dishes for you because I know you're in a hurry. And I felt your need. So I came and did the dishes. What does it take? 5 minutes? You taught me how to do it anyway. So, I could do that for you. So you can physically, and the cabal has been physically able to what they call slide it. There's several movies where they show it, and TV series as well. There's one where they moved entire building from line to line to line. There's another one called Sliders. They've actually gone to other timelines to get materials and resources and technologies. They've been doing this for a long time. The technologies is there. So just like they do with HARP, where they used to put frequencies on our head and feelings of negative emotions or pain or suffering or misery or fear or, all kinds of
the rest of it.
Yeah, all the rest of it. You could match the frequency of a timeline too, and you would be there. All you have to do is match it. You can even do what I call smoking the horizon, which is how I teach to see them. Is if you go, for example, it works easiest to first learn it in a country setting. So if you look at a mountain and open your eyes and see everything, and then you start looking like you with the 3D Amazing Eye books, you start looking deep into the mountain, for example, or deep into the fields of grass you see, you'll start to see it kind of like turn smoky. And you're looking through it. And I looked through a mountain, and now the mountain wasn't there. And there's actually a valley there instead. Because you're smoking the energy. You're literally focusing beyond what you're seeing in this world into another world. So you're remote viewing, if you will, from your body here into a different earth. So there's ways to look at them, and then there's ways to actually go to them. You don't have to be Superman.
So if I had a rocket, okay, let me put it like this, because I'm trying to understand something in my head. So if I had the most powerful rocket that could, fly to different universes and galaxies, will I be able to physically get to one of those universes on a different Earth, on a different timeline, and see another me physically face to face? Hello, Gene? Gene, you
wouldn't get to another universe because you're moving only in this universe. You're moving location. You're not moving in vibration. You have to move vibrationally in the quantum state.
I get that. So we move in vibration. I get that. Yeah, and so that means maybe a part of our conscious or a part of our soul would go into another universe, right?
That's how timeline changes work. Yes.
Right. So what I'm trying to understand,
part of your soul moves to another. So like the choice of you that became a barrister, that exists. That's an extension. You are the oversoul. Your oversoul is extended into every possible timeline.
So
you need to participate in to learn how to be the best person you can be in service to God. It's experiencing all. That's what ascension is. As you go to fourth density, you unify with a total of 12 yous unify, 11 other yous, which made significantly different choices based on a different way of thinking, so that you don't have later, I wished I'd done that differently. I wished I had been a bishop. Maybe I could have done that. Should have done that. Maybe I should have done that. What would have happened? You don't have that because you will have the knowledge of what it's like to have made that decision. Then, for example, when the next step up is when you go from fourth to fifth. That would be another 12. So it's actually now 144 possible. And it goes that way each step up so that you actually are your own oversoul. You don't hive mind or become parts with other people. You become more you, more aware of the consequences of your choices, feelings, emotions, and actions.
Right. So physically speaking, is there another me as a barrister on another earth? Somewhere out there physically.
Yeah. Yep. Married to a
so hypothetically,
yeah.
if I had a rocket made by God, a physical one that could jump to physically get there, travel there, then I could see another earth, another me, and another timeline as a barrister.
Absolutely.
Right. That's what I wanted to know.
Be able to walk up to yourself and shake your own hand.
Right. That's what I wanted to know.
So what's it like being a barrister? Tell me all about it. Well, I have
I like your suit.
He's 5'9", blonde, beautiful, 2 kids. I have a boy and a girl. The boy's, going through law school now. It's great. He's wanting to become a barrister too. He's he's so brilliant. The world court's looking at hiring him and getting him to represent the world court system. We're doing great, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. So you're saying that the cabal, they know this and they use frequencies to trap us in the emotions that they want us to feel, like fear, stress, depression, anxiety, like you have said. And then that influences our decisions and us making those decisions that are on a low frequency. It keeps us all on a timeline that benefits the cabal.
Right. And that delineates the timelines overall to become more negative, because as people jump, it's causing an overall. If you keep steering it down to a more negative, it's steering all of the manifolds to down. It's because people are moving. People pick it up, they rationalize it away. Like I've used this because it's occurred to me where I'm with a bunch of friends and we're watching a movie, or you might be, in your case, watching the game with, the football game with a bunch of friends. You decide the game's over to go out to the pub to share with your other friends about the outcome. You're all excited. Your team won. You said, I'll treat, let me get my keys on my wallet. I'll drive to, and you go to the table where you left them, and the table, that's all that was on there. It's not on there. So everybody starts looking around under the table. You go up to your bedroom to see if it's on your nightstand. Maybe you were confused. You wind up searching the whole house, and then finally you come back down. And it's like, one of your other friends goes, well, let's just get going. You know what? We can help you come back later and find it, or maybe it'll turn up. And you said, okay, so let me just grab my jacket. It was on the back of the chair, and my umbrella. So you go to the dining room again to get your jacket and an umbrella in the umbrella stand. And there's your keys in the wallet on the table. And you go, somebody playing a joke here? No, we wouldn't be looking all over the place. And it might actually happen when you're completely alone and nobody's there. And you search the whole house, you go back to where you thought you left it, and there's there. It's like, wow, I must be going blind or something. You actually caused a timeline switch. And because something that you needed, you left behind by your focus of trying to visualize and find it, you actually pulled it from the timeline you left into the timeline you moved to.
So you're saying that if we keep focused and pay attention, when we jump timelines, if we make big decisions, you're saying that we can see the inconsistencies if we pay attention.
Yep.
Because not everything's perfect.
Yeah, there's inconsistencies that because you've changed timelines. It can be minor or it can be major. If you've done a major shift, right, it could be a major change, like with me, what just happened, or it could be a minor little thing where there's a slight difference that you didn't notice. Like for me, a few years, like a 15 years, I think it was 20 years ago, my student and I drove to LA to go to a martial arts demonstration for Phoenix, where we were staying at the time. And on the way back, he was driving and I was reading a book on Tai Chi, and he made a comment. I looked at him and he looked at me, and I made reply to his comment. And then I looked back at my book and I'm 3 pages forward. I looked through the 3 pages and didn't even read them. I look at him and he goes, yeah, me too. I go, what? And he goes, the mile marker went by. You answered the comment, and not even 15 seconds later, a mile marker went by, but it's 3 miles up the road. We moved 3 miles in 15 seconds. This car can't go that fast. That's not possible. We got back to Phoenix. We decided to rent a martial arts movie and go to the Blockbuster. The whole building is gone. We're walking around an empty parking lot. Buildings are way over on the side now. And so the guy's walking across the parking lot, goes, "Excuse me, do you know if there's a Blockbuster near here?" And he goes, "Yeah, it's on the other side of the mall over there." So we go over to the Blockbuster, and now the gold and the blue has switched. The blue is gold and the gold is blue. So the building location switched. And a lot of people would reload and upload, but they might catch the color of the sign is off. And they go, "Has that always been that way?" Seems to me, like it wasn't mirror on the wall, or it wasn't life is like a box of chocolate, like life was like a box of chocolate. It doesn't even make sense. Life is like a box of chocolates, or like Field of Dreams. Build it and he will come. It was build it and they will come for me. So for different people, in it's different ways, and people are starting to catch it now because people are becoming more aware. And as they're aware of this now, even people hearing this that don't go, "Oh, that's a bunch of, that's totally insane. He's totally lost it now. He's really gone now. I see why he says people say that. He is that way." If people go, "Well, let me look and let me think about it," because now that you mention it, does seem to me like in Field of Dreams, for me, it seems like it was that build it and they will come. It really says build it and he will come. Yeah, it really says that. So, you're going to look around and start finding other dissonances, even in your own life, where like the lion in the Bible lays down with the wolf. What? It was a lamb. That doesn't even make any sense. A couple predators. I mean, yeah, they give each other a steely eye and you keep an eye on each other. But I mean, really, that's not a big deal to me. Other than they have to be careful with each other. But a lion with the lamb is a big deal. That would make a whole lot more sense. And a lot of things on this timeline aren't making sense because we're kind of in between right now. A solid timeline in which it's completely the Great Awakening and the stuff in the arm and all that never even occurred. Our timeline that's Armageddon is absolutely destroying. So we're kind of half right now on the timelines we're on, trying to steer people into one where it's completely positive and all this negative and all this stuff, that the cabal is completely crumbled. It's completely, we're seeing tribunals and all of that stuff going on, trying to get people to the most positive timeline of all, in as far as service to others and service to God and Christ, and to get it really, really solid. And, when we get there, for most people, they'll go, "What do you mean? It's always been this way." Like people tell me, "It's always been that way. The White House has never been in the Capitol building." Okay. I'm okay with that now.
Right.
But Gene, here.
Yeah, sure. Gene, I mean, you've given us many examples about the White House being in DC on another timeline, and you've told us that your friend's house is no longer there and there's a tree instead, with a hill or something. And then you mentioned that you was at school or college, and all the lockers had 2 shelves, but now they had 1. And then you mentioned again that a friend of yours or your neighbor, I can't remember, didn't have a son, but she had one in another timeline. So, I mean, these are significant changes. These are significant things that, it's not just, "Oh, I left my keys here," or, "Well, I just forgot," or, "I got confused." So you brush it off your shoulder and think, you didn't realize where you put it, which is a small thing. But saying something like, a house used to be here, but it's not now, and all of a sudden there's a massive tree where the house used to be. I mean, it's very significant. How is it that, for an example, I can't speak for others, but how is it that I haven't noticed something significant, massive like that, even once in my life?
For you, it could be one of 2 reasons. One is that for most people, when they change timelines, they upload the new timeline history, the past, into their mind and delete the old. And I've even caught this with myself when I've changed significant stuff, like the name of my friend I know, and I remember the event, but I can't remember his name anymore. He was a really good, one of my 2 best friends at that time. And I only had those 2 people, It's rare when I had two best friends. I'm pretty much of a solitary individual. I usually only had one. It was rare. So it was somebody that was significant. And I can't remember the name. And there's other changes where now I'm like, I know there was a change, but I can't exactly remember what it was, although it was significant, because you start to rewrite the history of what you're in, because the other one doesn't really, serve you on where you're at. And holding all these time changes in your head starts to get overwhelming at a certain point. You're like, okay, which past, which me, which this, it can get confusing. And so for most people, they overwrite. The other thing is, for some people, you may not have had a timeline change. Like, I didn't have Tataria. That's not my past. And, for you, there may have never been any timeline changes for you in your lifetime. So you will say, I ever experienced that. But for many people, because of what they're doing with Montauk and the Philadelphia experiment technology, the timelines are plastic. And now that the non-terrestrials that are positive had come and said, you're creating ripples throughout the entire universe doing what you're doing with all the jumping back and forth and all this stuff and doing distortions. It's creating distortions and everything everywhere. All the universes are having issues because of what you're doing. Stop, and the timelines heal. They're plastic, sticky, kind of like, and they pull back together. If you're creating all these new bundles, they'll pull back together if you stop messing around, because what you're creating is something that's going to actually self-terminate, like they have now found out. They've created a system that'll self-terminate, and it'll heal itself. So for a lot of people, when the rapture comes, they're never going to even remember a lot of this. For them, it'll have always been beautiful. I don't remember any of the stuff you're even talking about. I go, no, this was massively worse than it is now. There was, a lot of this and that happened, and a lot of tribulation and a lot of pain and suffering. They go, wow, well, okay. Just roll your eyes at you. Thought of it well. Like, now people are just going to roll their eyes and go, Jesus, totally gone now, isn't he?
So, the revelations in the Bible where it talks about the second coming and the mark of the beast. We had a discussion before we click record at the beginning of this interview, and you said that it's no longer, we're no longer on that timeline.
Right.
Do you want to explain that a little bit, please?
Right. Because of the choices of people that are deciding to really serve God and really believe that it can be done. That the cabal, 30 years ago, I didn't believe that the cabal could be taken down, that we could get to a point where it was even remotely possible, because of the massive technology and the massive power and wealth they'd accumulated and the number of people involved. It was so infiltrated everywhere, especially once Kennedy and then Reagan. I was like, yeah, not going to happen. Mm-hmm. And then, when Hillary got in, I'm like, yep, here we go. This is the beginning of the end. This is it. And sure enough. And then I'm like, well, okay. And then Trump got in later. I'm like, okay, well, we're on God's timeline. So now I'm seeing, a total change. And so now, and people are seeing it as well. And the more people, that's why, like Juan is saying, it has to be a certain percentage of people focusing on seeing the cabal come down, seeing it, visualizing it, praying on it, seeing what a world would look like where people work in jobs they love. So much so that and all this gold and all this Jasara and all this Nasara happens and all these technologies happen, so much so that money winds up being something you don't even need anymore, because people aren't selfish. They don't go in a store and get everything they could possibly want, because then you wind up throwing never use half the stuff. You don't have to live in a castle, nor for most people. You don't have to have all that stuff. What's really important, creating something beautiful, art, music, helping another person, to have a full life, helping each other, helping people to not suffer and be miserable, And so when people get real values, you go in a store. I had a person I went through high school with. It was a bagger in the store. He bagged groceries. He's now a cashier. I came back after all my military career. He's a cashier in the store. I go, I thought by now, if you wanted to stay here, you'd be the manager for the city. He goes, yeah, they offered me to be, district manager and all that. I don't want to do that. I like to be out with the people, see, I have people I really like to see and I love, and I've seen their kids and now it's their grandkids. I wouldn't do that if I'm sitting in an office. That's not what I want to do. So you have people that love what they do. One of the guys I studied under, who was one of my first black belt instructors, he liked to pick up the garbage right on the back of the truck. He goes, every day's like Christmas. I found diamond rings. I found $100 bills. It's fun. I love it. I like being out. I get a good workout. I don't have to go to the gym. I'm out seeing people and he loved being with people and seeing people and getting little finds, and so people do what they love. You go to a store, you get what you need. You don't just grab everything. I mean, if everybody did that, you don't have 1% of people that hoard 99.99998% of everything. If everybody that was evenly distributed to where everybody and people got what they need, yeah, there are people like Trump or somebody that's facilitating government structures, and those would need a mansion to have all the dignitaries and all this, or Mar-a-Lago or something like that, where you have big places where people can come. Yeah, that's true. But the average people will, have everything that they need and want to have a full life and a comfortable life, but not a life of opulence that's so ridiculous that you're treated like some kind of God or something who really, if you really get down to it, at the point where you're really loving other people, wants to have other people serve them. There are certain things, if I had my health right now, I'd be doing. I have to hire people right now because I don't have my health. But if I have my health, there's certain things I like to do. Like, I'm hiring people to do some work on my house that if I had, I'd love to do it myself. So I can look at that and go, I did that. And I can see, because I like how I do things and certain things.
Right. So, on another timeline, on another Earth, somewhere out there, Hillary Clinton is the president. Yes or no?
Absolutely.
And is there another universe out there where humanity came to an end?
On that timeline.
On that timeline, right. And because we're in this timeline, does that mean that we're all on this timeline? Or are there some people left in that timeline?
There are people that will never make a choice to be service to others. So they would only be on timelines that are very negative. That's just the nature of who they are deep down.
But on this Earth,
it would never be on a timeline like Armageddon because they're too kind, too loving, too considerate, too respectful, and love God too much.
Right.
Or so it's just not their appointment by God to be in a timeline that's that, self-destructive.
So tell me this: if we're on this good timeline now, I know people that are negative and would never serve humanity on this timeline. How comes they are here? Are they experiencing this life or another life or another timeline in a different universe?
Both. They're experiencing more negative and they're being given a chance. If there's God gives people chances to choose a different path. They're being given an opportunity that's, a short window of opportunity to make a change in how they are.
So if they are negative in another universe because they're in a more negative frequency universe and they couldn't, for an example, be in this one, what am I doing with them in that universe? Does that mean I'm in a lower frequency myself, in my other me in that universe?
Yeah, so you have various possibilities. And not only that, are they being given a chance here? Okay. It's also for us to see what it's like to not be the way we are. What are the consequences? What happens? Why not do that? Why do you not want that? Look what it does. Look how it hurts people. It's helping us understand and be more solid. Also for them there and you're there, it's showing them, here's what it looks to be a good man. Here's what it looks to be a good person. Here's what it looks like. It's giving them the opportunity. it's also giving you the opportunity to go, wow, yeah, I'm glad I'm how I am and I'm not changing. And I'll try here, even if as a lawyer, the you that's there still has some attachment to the way you are here. And it's going to go, this, the way the parliament is not by the rule of law. And I want to make changes. And so you're trying to get with other, people that are in there within the parliament and go, we need to get together and come together to make some changes here. So everything is occurring to help everybody get to the most positive outcome while there's time.
Absolutely. Gene, it's been absolutely wonderful having you on. You blow my mind and the viewers' minds. I get so many emails, how much people love you, that you're full of knowledge, and I love it, honestly. Something to think about. So I'd like to thank you very much for sharing that with us and the time. Is there anything that you would like to say to the listeners before we finish?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you, Nicholas, first. I love everybody, and I'm just trying to help for all the timelines, no matter what density, level, location, timeline you're on, to come to God and to come to Christ and to have the best possible life for yourself and all of life everywhere, and to see your children and your grandchildren, and for whatever, wherever you're originally from, to have a very positive outcome that's in the highest interests of all life everywhere, and in service to the highest interests of all life everywhere, and the highest timeline of the Creator. And so it's just, God that created all things. And that's why I'm here. And that's what I try to do. And so, as we said last time, God bless all of you and Godspeed.
Thank you very much, Gina. I wish you a speedy recovery, and we shall speak again in our next interview. God bless.
God bless. Thank you, Nick.